Okay, now that we've got our photo service, let's make use of this inside our users controller. So let's open up the users controller and we're going to inject effectively our iPhoto service into this one. So I'm going to say iPhoto service and call it photo service, and let's move this down as I'm going off the end of the screen. I've got a couple of things I can remove from here as well, so we could just use the quick fix and remove unnecessary usings inside here. So we're going to create a new endpoint effectively to add a photo. This is in an authorized controller, so we're going to have access to the user object as well inside here. And just underneath the previous endpoint, I'm going to add an HTTP post because we're going to be creating a resource in our database. And I'm going to give this a root parameter of add-photo, and we'll say public async task, and we're going to return an action result, and we need to return the full resource from this because our photo, after we've added it to Cloudinary, is going to have a public ID. So we're also going to return that to the client as well. So we're going to return a photo DTO from this, and we're going to say add photo, and we're going to take an iForm file and call it file as the parameter. Now the first thing we need to do is get hold of the user, and we've done this kind of thing before, and we used this approach previously with these two lines just for getting the username. I'd like to streamline this approach and make this easier to use. And to do that, we're going to create an extension method, and we're going to extend the user object, which is a type of claims principal. And because it's an extension method, I effectively want to be able to say user.getUsername and guarantee that I have a username after executing that method. So we'll go to Solution Explorer and we'll go to extensions, and I'm going to add a new file that's going to be a class, and I'm going to call it claims principal extensions. And inside here, let's just update the namespace to be extensions. We're going to make this a static class, and we're going to say public static string as we're returning a username from here. And we'll give the method name getUsername, and we're going to be extending this claims principal, and we'll just call it user. And inside here we're going to say var username equals, and we'll say user, and the find first gives us the claim, but we can also use find first value, and this returns the value for the first claim of the specified type, otherwise null if the claim is not present. So we're going to use find first value, which effectively gives us a string, and then we can say claim types and name identifier. And our username effectively at this point is either a string, or because we've got the question mark there, it could be null. Now, I don't want to return something that's potentially null to whoever's using this method. I want to pretty much guarantee it's going to be a user. Now, we're not inside the context of an API controller here, but I do want to break out of this function if this is null. And we can check to see if the username is equal to null, and if it is null, we can throw a new exception. And I'm just going to say cannot get username from token. Now they say that using exceptions for controlling the flow of a method, which is what we're doing here, is we're checking to see if we've got something and we want to break out of this function if we do not have it. And sure, that's a good point. We shouldn't really use exceptions as a method of controlling the flow through our method. But exceptions are exceptional, and this would be an exceptional exception because the only place we're going to be using this method is in controllers where we're authorizing the endpoint. And in our user's controller, if our user is not authenticated when they get to one of these endpoints, they don't even get to use any of the code inside here. They just immediately are returned with a 401 HTTP response before getting to any of the code inside here. So for this code to actually cause an exception for what we're doing here, that would be very exceptional. And really what I'm doing here is making it easy for ourselves to use what we're doing here with this username. So after this, we can guarantee that we have the username and we can return the username. And let's check the ellipses here. It says the null check can be simplified, and let's see what its suggestion is. And use coalesce expression. Okay, sure, that's a good point. And I'm going to accept that as an option. And these double question marks are referred to as the null coalescing operators. So now that we have this, we can go back to our users controller and let's replace what we have here, and we can take out these two lines in our update user method, and we can use the user.getUsername method directly inside the parameter for our getUserByUsername, because we know that we're going to have this, because this is not going to return null, it's going to return a string. And then we can use that inside our addPhoto method as well. So we can say var user equals user repository and getUserByUsername async, and we can say user.getUsername. And we do need to check this for null because the user could be null. So we're going to say if the user is null or equals null, then we're going to return a bad request at this point, and we're just going to say cannot update user. Something has gone wrong with our database, some other thing has happened because we're not able to get the user from the database for whatever reason. And then we can actually upload our photo. So I'm going to say var result equals, and we're going to say await and photo service, and we're going to use the addPhoto async, and we're going to pass it the file. And this result is a Cloudinary response, so we can check this for an error. And we're going to say if result.error is not equal to null, then we're going to return a bad request, and we're going to pass the result.error.message, whatever the problem was. And if we get something like one of our configuration settings wrong, like the cloud name, the API key, the API secret, then for sure we're not going to be able to upload our photo, and we'll see what the result or what the problem is inside that message. And following this, we can then go ahead and create the new photo. So I'm going to say var photo equals new photo, and inside here we can specify the URL, and we're going to get that from the result.secureURL.absolute_URI, and then we'll use the public ID and say result.public_ID. And following this, we can then say user.photos, and user.photos is not coming up. And when you see something like this, where you've got all of these task-related methods available, like getAwaiter, configureAwait, then what this typically means is we've forgotten to, well, I say I've forgotten to specify await when getting the user. So that needs to be await user repository. And then for our user, we can say user.photos and add, and we're going to pass in the photo there. And then we can update our database. So I'm going to say if await and user repository and save all async, then we're going to return, and we're going to map our photo into a DTO. So I'm going to return mapper.map and then say photo DTO and pass in the photo. And then I'm going to return a bad request if the save was unsuccessful, and just say problem adding photo. So that should do the job. And in the next lesson, we'll test our ability to upload photos to our API or to Cloudinary via our API. And we'll take a look at that next.